Stephen Jerome Williams, better known as Stezo, was a wonderkind, mastering 3 of the 4 main elements of hip-hop by the time he was 17 years of age. He became the neighborhood DJ of his residence, the Brookside public housing complex of New Haven, Connecticut. He combined breakdancing and gymnastics to stand out as a dancer. He started using a Casio SK1 to loop drum break snippets, and he began to rap to those snippets. Being in Connecticut meant that he had access to a wider world that is the New York metro area, the most populous and wealthiest of its kind in the United States. New York houses the city that gave birth to hip-hop. New Jersey, with its proximity to NYC and its role in the foundation of hip-hop with the Sugar Hill Gang and Sugar Hill Records, is considered NY's closest cousin. Pennsylvania was not too far off from New York either, providing acts such as gangsta rap and hardcore rap pioneer Schoolie D, pop rap pioneers DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, 3 Times Dope, and the Hilltop Hustlers crew that included Steady B and Cool C. Connecticut, one of the 4 states that comprised the New York metro region, was considered the laggard. But the Constitution states wasn't going to be that for long if she had people like Stezo in her corner. Traveling to New York City to get his name out there, he began to build a reputation at places such as the Latin Quarter, then a major hip-hop cultural magnet and catalyst for his advanced dancing skills. Ironically though, Stezo didn't get his big break while at the Big Apple, but rather when he was back home. In 1987, he came across a song on the radio named "You're a Customer" and fell in love with it. Stezo would find out that one of the song's co-authors was actually a student at Southern Connecticut State University, which was around the corner from his neighborhood. The student's name was Parrish Smith. Smith was one half of the duo EPMD, hailing from the New York suburb of Brentwood, Long Island. The group was built to perform at a club in New Haven, so Stezo and a friend of his decided to show up and show their dance moves, which they did when they realized that the dancers that EPMD had arrived with weren't getting the job done. Parrish Smith and the other half of EPMD, Eric Sermon, were so impressed by what they saw at the dance floor that they ditched their dancers in favor of Stezo. You're a Customer had been the B-side to EPMD's first single, It's My Thing. A follow-up was in order, ahead of the release of their debut album, Strictly Business, in June 1988. That follow-up would become their breakthrough and the album cycle's biggest hit, You Gots to Chill.
You got to chill.
And when the video was shot, Stezo played a prominent role in the background, executing the moves of the Steve Martin dance, a dance he invented, by the way, in a yellow tracksuit. Appropriate because he reportedly wrote the namesake song for EPMD's album. EPMD continued to be impressed with Stezo. When the Strictly Business album was released, Stezo could be proud to flip the record sleeve around to see him pictured with the group and their DJ, Killer Boss. And it was only going to get better. In August, EPMD was going to hop into the ongoing Run's House tour, headlined by Run DMC in support of their recently released album, Tougher Than Leather. Touted as the first nationwide hip-hop tour, the Run's House tour, named after the most successful single from Tougher Than Leather, included some of hip-hop's biggest hitmakers and most evolutionary acts, such as Public Enemy, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and LL Cool J. But then Stezo's trajectory stalled. Whether it was because he could be a bit of a hothead or because others saw him as a good-looking triple threat that needed to be tamed, Stezo was beginning to gain a reputation for drawing attention to himself, and it sometimes worked against him, as evidenced by being kicked off the Run's House tour when he got into an altercation with the same guy who had helped put him on. Stezo may have been down, but it wasn't out. Before he hit the big time as an EPMD dancer, he was already concentrating on the last element of hip-hop he was trying to master, MCing. A 3-song demo was waiting to be heard thanks to the assistance of budding producers Chris Lowe and Stezo's cousin, Alan Jackson, aka Dulio, as well as Charlie Murata, the same engineer who had worked on EPMD's Strictly Business. Why stop at busting a move when you can also bust a rhyme? Imagine kicking out someone from your camp only for them to end up on the same record label to which you're assigned. That's precisely what happened with EPMD and Stezo. The former was signed to Fresh Records, a subsidiary of New York-based independent record label Sleeping Bag Records that focused on hip-hop acts. Although Stezo was on the outs with EPMD, especially with Parrish, Virgil Sims, the vice president of promotion at Sleeping Bag, was impressed enough with the dancer's demo to offer him a deal. Legend has it that EPMD offered Sims $50,000 to not sign Stezo. Sims was probably like, man, keep your 50 stacks. Another break awaited Stezo, in more ways than one. Dulio and Chris Lowe had come across something in one of the 2 crates of records that a neighbor had allowed them to haul away from our house. An album sleeve with a trail of weathered skulls surrounded by a trio of skeletons and enveloped by a dark background would have been quite an intriguing sight for anyone, and the 2 young crate diggers were piqued enough to play the record and come across one of the tracks, It's a New Day, which starts with 2 bars of nothing but a snappy, sparkling combination of kicks, snares, and hi-hats. True to its front cover art, the album, which had been released in 1973, was named Skull Snaps, put together by its namesake Maryland Halen funk trio that had lived a previous life as a soul outfit named the Diplomats. Not to be confused with these guys. Without the access to a sampler, the duo had the painstaking task of putting tape together, weaving the isolated breakbeats from It's a New Day with Ike and Tina Turner's Bold Soul Sister and the Meters' Tippy Toes to create a record named Watch My Moves.
Watch my moves, 1990, birdie flying, fullest effect, you know what I'm saying?
Recorded at Trognaso Studios in Wallingford, a town less than 15 miles away from New Haven, Watch My Moves is the actual first use of the Skull Snaps drum break. 2 things, though, worked against it. 1, it was not released until 1990. 2, Dooley and Lowe let the music ride on the drum break throughout the song, never once letting it be isolated like it is in the original. While Dooley O pitched Watch My Moves to get a record deal at Fresh Records, Sims was a lot more interested in the break than the record itself. Since Sims refused to give Dooley a record deal, Dooley refused to give Sims the beat for his newly signed artist, Stezo, to use. With Sims in his ear, Stezo ended up going to Lowe's house and stealing the Skull Snaps album. Using his sampling prowess due to his experience with the Casio SK1, Stezo was going to stick to the original layout, allowing nothing but the It's a New Day beat play for 2 bars, then have the siren-like sounds of ESG's UFO join it, and then, finally, as though taking a cue or 2 from his ex-buddies EPMD, have P-Funk founder George Clinton's Atomic Dog drop in for the melody. It's My Turn is actually the B-side to Stezo's debut single, To the Max. How one song broke over the other was determined by feuding radio station camps. Cool DJ Red Alert, the overlord of WRKS 98.7, aka Kiss FM, favored the B-side. Marley Marl, a DJ for Mr. Magic's Rap Attack show at WBLS 107.5 FM, together with a younger DJ under him who went by the moniker Pete Rock, favored the single. The preferences were easy to understand. Kiss FM leaned toward the mainstream. WBLS leaned toward grit. To the Max, a 4-verse rhyme fest with some vigorous scratching, is orally brutal. A harnessing of tambourines and dark piano notes gleaned from Betty LaVette's Soul Tambourine, another first by the way, to a thumping drum beat. It was ideal for the heads and hard knocks. But eventually, that B-side that Red Alert kept on spinning caught on. That drum break, those 3 seconds of galloping crispy rhythm sampled from Skull Snaps attracted most of the attention, with lyrics that made for good salad dressing.
I came to make you move and groove and get down. There's no way that the crowd can sit down.
It also helped that It's My Turn got a video that included Stezo with his dance moves, executed while wearing sparkling billowy pants that presaged the nationwide and international emergence of another budding performer, albeit from Oakland, California. Add scenes that had him in a helicopter hovering over the Twin Towers, and the music video was bound to be part of the opening collage for Yo MTV Raps, and climb as high as number 18 on the Billboard Hot Rap Songs chart. So, Stezo had a record deal, a hit song, and the ability to move to the groove in his arsenal. But cutting a 12-inch single was one thing. Making an album was another.
Album? What's that, 12 songs? So, I'm like, I'm writing the album, it's crazy.
Stezo didn't need to fret that much. He had some help. Co-producing with him were Chris Lowe and another DJ by the name of Jimmy Slice. 2 of what would turn out to be 12 tracks were produced by hip house beatmaker Douglas Finley, better known as Vicious V. And as for the mixing and engineering, that was left up to Paul McCasty, better known as Paul C., who, by the age of only 23, had fashioned a robust resume of clients that included Grandmaster Caz, Ultramagnetic MCs, Biz Markie, Main Source, and Queen Latifah. Indeed, Paul C. is the reason why the Skull Snaps breakbeat in Stezo's song has that beefy sonic presence. Stezo's debut album was going to be named Crazy Noise, after the term that his mother had for all the loud scratching he and his friends would produce from his room. Crazy Noise, released in the first half of 1989, is a self-written and largely self-produced effort, expanding the multifaceted hip-hop expertise of Stezo, and it has much more than its famous B-side and the strong first single to which it's attached. In Crazy Noise, Stezo is primarily preoccupied with showing how awesome he is at his newly adopted vocation, with consistently solid production to match. Bring the Horns kicks off the album with a sped-up loop of guitar chugging from Kool and the Gang's Life Is What You Make It, layered over a steady slamming drum beat, and lyrics centered around a simple yet effective approach to music making.
Hold it, I take a beat and like fold it. Put the lyrics together and then mold it. All together, it adds up to dopeness.
Freak the Funk, the album's second single, is up next, a more subdued affair, even with the go-go rhythm of Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers busting loose. Notable, though, is Vicious V's house music sensibilities by inserting a sample of fellow practitioner Nitro Deluxe's Let's Get Brutal as the hook, and Stezo wants everyone to know how hard he has worked to get to where he is. He ain't no joke. Don't let his complexion fool you. Talkin' Sense is standard funk sampling fare, an average white band loop strewn with samples from James Brown disciples. And Stezo does his usual boasting. The formula is clear. Light, harmless rap served over loop-reliant soundscapes. Pretty straightforward, right? There's a bit of variance. Put Your Body Into It is a rapid James Brown-propelled sonic slam for the dance floor. Gets Into His Move compensates for the standard bragging with thunderous drums and drawn-out horns from Sly and the Family Stone's Sing a Simple Song. And the title track rides a rock dirge drum break, this time from Sly Stone, from beginning to end as if its entire vitality depends on it. Elsewhere, Stezo relishes the feeling of getting paid, and there's the obligatory DJ slot for Jim Slice to get busy on the vinyl in Jimmy's Getting Funky, flipping Boogie Down Productions' synonym for condoms into self-praise. That must have felt good. Stezo's limited topical range and slightly underdeveloped technique can be permitted, considering the circumstances. No one had come across a dancer becoming a rapper before, and Stezo, a relative neophyte at rapping, decided to seize an opportunity that presented itself. Plus, as stated earlier, MCing was the last of the 3 hip-hop elements that Stezo got to. However, Crazy Noise has gained a level of infamy for certain mispronunciations, intended or not. For instance, in It's My Turn, anthem becomes anthonym, and in Talkin' Sense, irrelevant becomes irrelevant. There's also the obvious strain that shows up when he tries to topically stretch himself a bit too much. Girl Trouble, in which Stezo recounts when he got the best of one lady in the first verse, and when he got bested by another lady in the second verse, is decent but rudimentary. Let's just say that artists such as Slick Rick and Ice-T were setting the storytelling bar far too high for most folks. And then there's the issue of state pride. In his follow-up single, Freak the Funk, Stezo said this, a claim that he reinforced during an interview at WBLS, you know, the radio station that favored To the Max, not It's My Turn. His comrades and fellow Connecticutians felt dissed by his implicit disavowal, and that must have deepened Dooley O's chagrin for his cousin. Bad enough that Stezo didn't give him any credit for discovering the Skull Snaps breakbeat. Now he's fronting like he's from Brooklyn, New York to boost his hip-hop bona fides, as though being from New Haven, Connecticut made him less credible?
Monday when I got to school, I was getting it from north, south, east, and west. Why he say this? Why he say from Brooklyn and he knew he grew up in New Haven, this, that, and the third. All I was saying all day, I don't know.
But those were mere quibbles to Stezo, who closes out Crazy Noise with Going for Mine, with the idealization of a fairy tale ending. The ex-dancer, cast away by a soon-to-be legendary group, has nevertheless made it as an MC due to steely determination and hard work. And if he can make it, you can too.
Sit at the table and write some rhymes like I did. That's why I'm going for mine.
But maybe Stezo celebrated too soon. His engineer, Paul C., was murdered on July 17, 1989, and his demise cast a large shadow over those who worked with him, damaging them emotionally and professionally. In some cases, that damage was permanent. Plus, Stezo's rise coincided with that of a similar artist in the West Coast, and that parallel was bound to cause tension. MC Hammer, who was mastering his robotic, high-energy style as a dancer, was performing at a rodeo venue somewhere in Texas when Stezo, who had been invited to tour with him and was stationed at a side of the backstage, began to dance and draw attention to himself with his comparatively smooth, fluid moves. Hammer, with an album that had just been certified platinum and who prided himself in being the alpha hip-hop performer, was not pleased by being possibly, upstaged. And let's not forget EPMD. Eric and Parrish were not happy with someone who they considered their underling being on equal footing with them, and they were going to address exactly how they felt. They were gearing up for their second album, Unfinished Business, which would be released on July 25, 1989. 4 months before that, though, they dropped the album's lead single, So What You Sayin', which contained a line that Stezo was pretty sure was for him. Worse, EPMD performed that single on March 9, 1990 at Rapmania, The Roots of Rap, a concert commemorating the 15th anniversary of hip-hop and simulcasted at the Apollo Theater in New York City and the Palace Theater in Hollywood, California. Millions tuned in to watch EPMD perform arguably their most successful single up to that point, complete with Parrish's perceived darts at Stezo. Stezo, embarrassed by the high-profile diss and now at its boiling point regarding his former employers, went to the same studio that Dooley had recorded Watch My Moves and recorded Piece of the Pie. Featuring Dooley, dousing enough of his resentment for Stezo to deliver smack-talking interludes and backed by the appropriate gloom of Bob James's Nautilus, Stezo really let loose. And no, not with his dance moves.
Yeah, you're mad cause your dancers made it. Now you're pissed off and boy, you just hate it. I told you once that you can't get me. I got a bone to pick with you, PMD. Just call it quits and lay back and die, cause your ex-dancer got a piece of the pie.
Yeah, it's lightweight. Piece of the Pie will never appear on any greatest disses of all time lists. In fact, the most memorable words in this song may not be from Stezo himself, but rather from Dooley for all the wrong reasons.
First album, strictly business. Second album, unfinished business. Third album, out of business, suckers.
Of course, we all know that EPMD's third album is not out of business. That's actually their sixth one, and it's not even their last. Bottom line, EPMD survived what befell the parent record company they shared with their former dancer. Never a company that sold millions of units, Sleeping Bag Records was in dire financial straits, which meant that Stezo's Piece of the Pie was never coming out. It was eventually released in 2004. Sleeping Bag ceased operations in 1991 and was closed for good the following year. EPMD was fortunate enough to get picked up by Def Jam's Rush Associated labels, with distribution by Sony Music's Columbia Records. The sign-in was just in time for their third album, in retrospect, amusingly titled Business as Usual, to be unleashed in December 1990. Well, that's what 2 consecutive gold-certified acclaimed albums get you. As for Stezo, he was left out in the cold when Fresh Records folded. Crazy Noise had managed to make it to the lower half of the Billboard Top R&B and Hip Hop Albums chart, but that performance wasn't enough to ensure longevity in the music industry. Stezo would spend the next 3 decades issuing or overseeing a smattering of 12 inches, maxi singles, and compilations of previously unreleased or obscure material. never again releasing a full-length album during his lifetime. Eventually, he transitioned into something more stable than a career in hip-hop: barbering. He had a shop, S&S Cuts, in West Haven, Connecticut, and as soon as the COVID-19 pandemic began, he started expanding to an outpost in Charlotte, North Carolina. But then, on April 29th, 2020, Stezo passed away in his sleep, reportedly of heart failure. He was only 52. Legend has it that when Stezo, Low, and Dooley O arrived at the University of New Haven to have Watch My Moves played at the institution's radio station, it took only one spin for someone to jack the beat and name his version Sweat My Moves. That's how quickly the breakbeat from Skull Snap's It's a New Day caught on. And thanks to Stezo's jacking, Paul C's engineering, and the drum beat isolation, hip-hop acts throughout the 90s preferred to sample It's My Turn instead of the original source. DJ Premier used it for Gang Starr's Take It Personal. Jay Swift used it for The Far Side's breakthrough hit Passing Me By. Chai Skills used it for Onyx's first major hit, Throw Your Guns. The Beat Miners used it for Black Moon's debut single, Who Got the Props. And Pete Rock even went further by sampling a bit of the It's a New Day vocals for Heavy D and the Boys song of the same name. These are just a few examples of the scores of rap songs in the 90s, and to a lesser extent, the 2000s that carried the Skull Snaps DNA. The It's a New Day breakbeat became one of the hallowed breakbeats of hip-hop, next to others such as the Honey Drippers' Impeach the President, the Winstons' Amen Brother, and James Brown's Funky Drummer. And it still remains with the most captivating story of them all. Ironically, and amusingly, the act that ended up drawing from the well of Skull Snaps by way of Stezo more times than anyone else in hip-hop was EPMD. Their protégés, Das Effects, have the drum break on 3 tracks off their debut album, Dead Serious, released in April 1992. EPMD themselves sampled the break in Can't Hear Nothing But the Music on their 4th album, Business Never Personal, released in July 1992. In September, another EPMD protege, Redman, had Eric Sermon as a guest on a Skull Snaps helmed song entitled Watch Your Nuggets on his debut album, What? The Album. And after EPMD fell apart by 1993, Sermon used the break, not once, not twice, but 3 times in his debut album, No Pressure. One of the songs even ended up being a single. Hard to resist a really dope breakbeat, even if a person you're feuding with is the one who brought it to the masses. So, it's easy to understand why the discovery of the It's a New Day drum break overshadows the album that bears its first commercial use. Crazy Noise is not a crazily dazzling LP. There's no knockout punch in the entire affair. It seemed destined for dollar bins and the inner recesses of rap history, and it wasn't going to change the pecking order of the New York metro area. NYC is still the Mecca. New Jersey is still NYC's formidable cousin. Pennsylvania, by way of Philadelphia, has only strengthened its contribution of rap acts in the 2000s and 2010s. And Connecticut, unfortunately, is still the laggard. However, even when you discount the historically and culturally significant It's My Turn, Crazy Noise is deserving of a second look. It provides one of the most balanced listening experiences of 80s era rap LPs, stacked from top to bottom with vibrant lyrics and beats that rarely dip in quality. And that's beyond impressive for someone who set off to be a dancer, not an MC. So, at least before he clocked out of planet Earth, Connecticut hip-hop's most famous son put up a heck of a fight. Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rap Perspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you in the next video.